Hi all, I have another fantastic game to show you today. Stockfish 11 against Leela ID 62076. Another interesting anti-Sicilian variation which you can find in that free short and sweet anti-Sicilian course by Grandmaster Alex Kolovich. This is against the Snyder variation, I believe it's the Snyder variation, and knight c6 is the recommendation. d6 here, which gives support for playing the move e5 to blunt this bishop. So a very logical move d6. Bishop b5 and bishop d7 is the recommendation here. Simple and strong. Getting that bishop pair is usually desirable. We have knight f3 being played in this game. So Stockfish 11, out of book now, chooses knight f3. Magnus Carlsen has popularised this line a bit, and he's usually played f4 here. There's two very interesting games that he's played with this line. This is one of them, which followed like this, where Magnus basically aimed to castle queenside. This is against John Elvist. White got a really aggressive game like this. So look at that kingside avalanche. Black tried to get some play over here, and the thing is, things starting to get a bit painful soon with the pressure mounting. And we saw bishop takes e5 here, winning a pawn. Is check, that won a pawn, because if takes, obviously the queen's dropping and the rook's going to be a rook up for white. So eventually here black actually resigned. So that was Carlsen against, pardon me, that was Magnus Carlsen against Leela 2, played in Caxias de Sol 2014. But there's a game variation after castling queenside. Instead of queen c7 following that path, player with black, Jean Elvis, played castling here. So this is an international tournament 2018. So queen c7, g4, rook fe8, g5, and here g6 was used to inflict the damage, undermining the pawn chain there. h5, pitting open that h file. And it got very, very dangerous. Exchange sack, but look at black's king safety. It's been well and truly compromised. This bishop is now supporting this whole diagonal to the things like coming to h8 potentially. Knight takes d6. The centre's also being compromised. And here, this very, very dangerous move. So f5, opening up things even more. And then crashing through like this. And that was the end of that. If king f8, rook d8, checkmate. So there's two absolutely smashing games in this line. So it has been used by Magnus Carlsen, but with f4 being Magnus Carlsen's choice, it seems, you know, from a human perspective, it's quite an easy idea to follow. That you're prepared to give up part of your bishop pair, but you want to like castle queenside with this system and use these pawns to sort of avalanche the kingside. It seems nice to follow. Stockfish 11 plays knight f3 though. And in this short and sweet course, Alex Kolovich says basically he recommends f4 as the follow-up, not knight f3. And he basically gives the idea that, you know, e5 and then fianchettoing is going to give black a nice game. And in fact, knight f6 is chosen here. So no a6 provoking an exchange. So instead of a6, because that could go into that classic opposite side castling scenario, knight f6 maybe is technically stronger than a6. There's no rush to play a6. And in this game we have Stockfish 11 playing d3. You might wonder for a moment about e5, but this is a loose piece on b5, so black has knight takes e5 hitting that bishop. It's a common tactic, and there's no real compensation there. The bishop can even drop back there, inconveniencing white further. If white wants the castle, then, well, this knight has to move. That bishop has to be blocked. It's a disaster. So e5, knight takes e5 is very, very good here. And if bishop takes d7 check, then we recapture like this. So we just snag the pawn, and there's no real compensation, it seems, for white in this position. There's nothing exciting there. So knight f6 is fully playable. Don't worry about e5. It seems d3 was played, g6, a4. Now this bishop is protected. One might be again concerned about white playing e5, but Stockfish 11 decided against it, castled instead. If e5, it is actually mostly harmless after knight d5. Say castling, knight takes e5 is possible. This position is perfectly nice for black. So instead, if c4, then actually the knight can even go to f4. And here, this is very pleasant indeed. And if the knight's on f4, then g2 is under scrutiny. For example, here is very, very nice for black. So white just castled, black just castled, rook e1. You might think, oh, last chance before black's going to play e5. Let's check it out for one moment. Here, again, knight d5. And in fact, again, knight f4 now here is very nice. For example, this position is very nice for black. So yeah, if there's also a nice choice in a6 as well, similar ideas. And if ever this, to try and avoid playing g3, then things can get quite troublesome after bishop c6. Yeah, this is going to be big trouble. The queen could be lost. So these lines are not particularly good with e5. So black creates that clamp now in the game. After rook e1 is played, black is the one to finally play e5. And this is a kind of padlock situation in a way. When I say like a padlock metaphor strategy, it's very difficult to break out of unless you're Houdini. But Leela's not playing Houdini. No, Leela's playing Stockfish. Okay, in joke there. Okay, no, but it's a padlock strategy. A very poor joke, I know. Forgive me. Okay, so e5, it's like white has been padlocked on the d4 square. Unless he tries like c4, it's going to be long-winded to play for d4 now. And you might think, well, what can you do with this? Is this a useful padlock? It kind of is, because you can play on the king side now with a later f5. And in fact, this bishop, getting this bishop will make f5 even more powerful if there's a bishop striking across this diagonal. So be aware and anticipate this idea now. Knight bd2, a6, collecting that light square bishop. Stockfish volunteers it now. Going to c4 looks a bit rather dubious actually, because of things like knight a5 and b5 coming up. The bishop would be kind of stranded here if we look at this for a moment. It's a bit of a target. You know, as an example, maybe, you know, later knight a5 and b5 could be a problem. So the bishop exchanges itself off, and the kind of padlock has got new venom basically, because if black now is going to play for f5, there's going to be even more pressure on this diagonal and e4. We have a5 though, marking this square. Is that significant? If it isn't played, then black plays b5, and this position is very pleasant for black. So there's no problems at all for black. So a5, we have knight h5, so the start of a really aggressive plan. Some people, I don't know why, on the Leela forums in recent weeks has said as though Stockfish is the young, energetic, you know, magical tactician. That's fine, but Leela is really often imaginative and attacking, and despite Stockfish's calculation power, Leela is the one which, you know, mathematically gets the pieces near the king, as we're going to see soon in this game. Knight c4, knight f4, one very dangerous piece already near the king, nicely entrenched. Bishop c1, and now f5, so trying to ignite this diagonal, not minding a temporary inconvenience of double pawns. Very energetic play from this Leela. So we have h3 being played. If bishop takes f4, it's no big deal, it seems. This opens up that bishop for a start. If e5, you might think to try and justify this. Well, queen d5 here as an example, threatening checkmate. And this position, if we look at this, even if black loses that bishop pair, there's still significant pressure on the position. This is pretty nasty stuff. Now g5, so I think it's just really aggressive play on the king side. Reminds me a bit of Nesmetanov. We have bishop takes f4 now, which does of course open up that bishop. E takes. Okay, so offering an exchange sacrifice, so probably very deeply calculated, but Leela is not tempted by that and just plays queen f6. We have rook c1. There is an idea now of queen takes rook, clearing off the queens as well, but Stockfish avoids that. Rook a e8. Clearly, if queen takes f5 here, then knight takes d6 is plausible, and that is very nice for white. So yeah, don't want to let d6 go here. So rook a e8, but rook e6 now. Rook takes, f takes, and here things get really energetic against the white king. So if you're a budding attacking player, you've got a delightful position here in theory with the bishop pair, but can you actually make any sort of attack work here? What would you start with in this position? It's really crushing gravitational stuff to damage the opponent's king safety in an irreversible way. So it starts with this next move. I wonder if you can guess it. It's fabulous attacking play. If I give you 5 seconds to pause the video, what would you play in this position? Okay. G4. That's the first move. Marvellous. H takes G4. Queen takes E6. So temporary pawn sack. But if the knight dares to move, there's always things like F3. So what is white doing here? G5, it's conceding that G4 square, and then there's that nasty pin. So Stockfish 11 tries knight H4. Just to put a few things on the board, if knight H2, F3 immediately, if G takes, you might think, well, this is solid, isn't it? Rook takes F3 smashes white to bits. So this position is absolutely devastating, for example. If we look at this again, well, what about G3? Bishop C3 is strong. It's actually potentially stronger than Bishop D4, because that might fall to C3. So Bishop C3 creates a real padlock on the position, where the E1 square is out of bounds now for white. And this knight could be kicked, and then kicked again. And this kind of thing is just enormous positionally for black. If you look at this, it's not even about the king anymore. It can be about the king a little bit, but it can also be about snapping off A5 and returning back. Sometimes black's getting a big advantage there. The knights are not really doing anything. They're crushed, these knights. They're very sad creatures here in this position. So we have actually knight H4 being played, so it protects the pawn, and it offers knight F5 now. Does this refute black's conception? Well, guess what Leela now plays in this position. So this is going to be for the attacking manual for attacking players, how to play this position with the bishop pair against the two knights. So black to play here, if I give you 5 seconds to pause the video here, what would you play in this position? Okay, Alpha Zero style, H5, offering another pawn. Just pure Alpha Zero style. Not F3. This blows things quite significantly, it seems. Knight F5 becomes possible if black tries an exchange sack to break through. There's always Queen F1 there, and white's getting a big advantage, starting to get control over the possession. So that resource Queen F1 is very important, of course. If we forget about Queen H3 and try Bishop D4 here instead, we don't get time for using the pinned pawn, because Queen D2, for example, Queen H3, there's always these checks now. It's going to be just a drawn by perpetual check. So H5 is really the one which puts the cat among the pigeons, so to speak. H5. So G5. If G takes H5 here, this is a very different story indeed. After F3, G3. Bishop F6. So without any knight F5, the knight might try and use G6 instead. But here, Bishop D4 is crushing. There's no real time for C3 because of Queen H3 and Queen G3. If knight takes, for example, this position, Queen takes G3, and this is helpless for white after, for example, this continuation, threatening to checkmate with Queen H4. So these are all pretty helpless. If it moved 23 instead of knight F5, HG there, and this position is devastating on the H file for white. That's going to be a big advantage for black as well. So yes, this G5 was tried, not G takes H5. And now, what would you play with black? Okay, 5 seconds again. F3. Yeah, this puts a spanner in the works. G3 is played. If knight takes F3, then rook takes F3. And queen H3 here, this is very strong, because here there's queen takes, right, then queen H1 checkmate. And if here check, and check, and check, and check, and it's going to be devastation. It's checkmates all round. If king G1 in one of the lines, then there's queen H1, by the way. Okay, so we have G3, so the form pawn has been installed. Bishop C3, locking down, padlocking white. White is helpless here. Look at the helpless knights, spectator pieces, spectator knights. Look at these bishops. They're helping just create a very powerful padlock on the position, supporting the form pawn, supporting control of E1, suppressing C3. But can black make enough progress? If black played the inaccurate bishop D4, then C3, for example, and then white's going to be breathing a sigh of relief. Yep, the chips are not going to be fried there. So bishop C3. Instead, though, we have knight E3, D5. This is what black can do to improve the position. D4. You might think, well, what sort of progress is that? Rook E8 now. Okay, it's looking super dangerous here to consider knight F3 in the light of things like queen E2. We have queen F1. If knight takes, but actually, sorry, more concretely, there's even worse than queen E2. Let me just test you on that. I've actually got a specific note about this position. In this position, okay, queen E2 I mentioned, I thought, it looks dangerous as well. But you can actually do much better. Maybe, white wriggles away with taking king G2. What would you play here? Black to play. No, the crushing move, forget queen E2, is rook F8. And then, yeah, this is just desperate. Bishop D5, believe it or not, leaves these knights in suspended state. This simple move maintains the pressure without simplification. And it means here, for example, this position, what's the straw that breaks the camel's back here? If you were playing with the black pieces, what would you play in this position? Okay, simply H4. Look at white's position. It's frozen. If then taking here, and the bishop can come back to C7, for example. Or taking here is devastating. If white tries queen F1, if C3, the bishop comes back to C7, and then, yeah, it's devastation. So, yes, we have actually queen F1, not knight takes F3. Now, queen G4, knight G6, rook E2, here, very strong, queen G1. King G7, knight goes to F4, and now H4. Yeah, just wrenching open this H file, another road to the white king. Rook F1, rook E8, preparing to use that lethal H file. So Stockfish has been completely destroyed in this game. It hasn't been made up. It's a 3 minute with a 2 second increments. It's not a bullet game. It just shows the ferociousness, the attacking potential of Alpha Zero style play. Stockfish just being... I don't believe any of the Stockfish hype. I just don't believe it, because fundamentally it's incremental depth search to me. The neural network holistic approach, being able to see millions and millions of game outcomes and kind of use that to model the play, makes, first of all, the games, we can use a lot of the strategies on our own human over the board games, and they are spectacular attacking masterpieces. I think anyone who says otherwise, I think they're just misinformed. This is just vicious stuff using the H file. So we have G takes H4 in desperation. Might as well just resign here after G takes H4. Queen takes F4, check, piece up. It's a mopping up job now, just to piece up. Get rid of this knight. Force these pawns to move forward. And the king comes in to try and get these pawns. This one's been snapped off. It's just the bishop up. Let's see the technique. So not minding undoubling white pawns. So d3 is coming if that pawn's not taken. So, you know, say a token move just to show what black will play d3 without any need for c4, any nonsense like this rook b7, h7. Just play d3 here, forget that. And that's going to be a big advantage to black. So, but king takes f3. And this pawn falls off. Okay, that pawn's blockaded officially. And taken now. And it's just pure bishop up here. Not much needs to be said really. Pure bishop up. Quite easy to convert this. And just going for that c2 pawn, or to create a pass d pawn, potentially, or just win the c2 pawn. It's over. Bother shouting. And that's it. The game ended here. It was auto-resigned. So yeah, my impression is the Leela networks are the most aggressive AlphaZero style chess going. Doesn't need to be a mammoth calculating monster. I believe it's really absorbing some really beautiful game patterns, attacking game patterns, where material downsides are not treated as major downsides. They're just ways of really getting amazing positions with permanent damage to the opponent, who is basically overindulged, quite often materialistically, like Stockfish did here. I thought it was absolutely fabulous, this example of attacking chess. And also it shows the validity of this anti-Snyder system. So this early bishop d7, and to play knight f6, check out that recommendation in the free short and sweet anti-Sicilian course. It's one of the core lines presented there. If you want to tackle, you know, people trying to spoil your fun when you play the Sicilian defense, that's well worth checking out. These lines, I think we can check them out with modern technology and see, you know, under great pressure from the likes of Stockfish 11, if they can withstand the pressure. And this line in particular seems very solid indeed. Okay, thanks very much.